Thank you for joining us. I see we have a full house, a lot of people here today.
Steve, we have just a pinch under 150 people registered for
Wow.
tonight's webinar.
Okay, well, about half have joined, and maybe the other half will watch the recording of this. I'm so excited to talk about this topic. I believe in one of my comments on socials, I mentioned I think this is a strategy that every Canadian, in my opinion, should be implementing if they have the ability to do so. So we have a lot to cover tonight, and I think we'll get started with some introductions. So perhaps I'll let everyone introduce themselves shortly. Maybe we'll start with you, Wayne, first.
Start with me. I'm the CEO and the founder of REI Masters. My wife, Gabby, and I coach real estate investors across Canada. I'm also part of the leadership team with Finngo as part of the advisory board and ensuring all services meet the needs of real estate investors.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we have the one and only Mr. Keaton Kirkwood in the house.
Investor focused mortgage broker extraordinaire.
Yes, exactly. Mr. Kirkwood.
I don't want to say
Do we
anything.
have be able to unmute himself, or maybe
I
he
have to
took
unmute
client
myself.
call?
I talk too much, so I try to minimize it.
Maybe 1 minute, one sentence introduction for you, Keaton.
Hi, everyone. I'm a Smith Manoeuvre certified investor-focused mortgage broker. Nice to meet you all.
Keaton, you will have to pull your microphone closer
Am I too
to
quiet?
your mouth. Yeah.
Okay, I'll use a different mic.
And I'll just give you a very brief introduction about myself, Steve Tsonev. I'm the managing partner of Finngo Bookkeeping and Tax, and we specialize on providing tax and advisory services for real estate investors. And today we are putting a webinar on the Smith Maneuver. So that is something that kind of crosses the realm of taxes a little bit because it does have some investing sides to it. And this is why we have Mr. Hillier, and it also crosses into the mortgage world. And Mr. Kirkwood can cover all these fine details. Before we move on, I want to show you some of the events that or webinars that I've been putting lately. The last couple of sessions, we talked about rentals bookkeeping. That one was quite a popular session, and we might actually end up repeating it soon. We also have talked about the fix and flip bookkeeping and what's important for that because it's a pretty specific kind of area of bookkeeping. Today we have this webinar, which is on the Smith Maneuver, and basically we will show you how you can take advantage of your principal residence mortgage interest and be able to write that off on your taxes. On September 21st and 22nd is Recon, the Real Estate Investing Conference. Finngo will be there. Keaton will also be there. Me and him will have a breakout session. Wayne will also have a breakout session. It's going to be full of knowledge and many other people that you might want on your power team. Definitely a great event to attend. It's going to be 2 days long, so check that out. And in case you need a discount code, let me know. We have some of those available as well. There's something new that is starting. Wayne is going to be doing a in-person Edmonton Deal Lab. It's going to be limited, only a few people attending there, and we will be starting a wait list for that, just because I feel like a lot of people would want to attend that. And our next month's webinar is going to be on bookkeeping for real estate agents. If there are any realtors in the house, that would be a date to mark down because that's going to be the next webinar. And maybe, Wayne, do you want to add anything about your deal lab? Something I might have missed?
No, to be honest with you, I wasn't expecting you to put it in there, and then you did, and then I'm like, okay, fine. But yeah, we're still in the early stages of developing it and trying to figure out what we want to come of it. But ultimately, in our market in Edmonton, I know that there is a big lack of understanding about how to analyze deals, and I want to start getting back into doing more in-person stuff. So if I'm going to do it, it's going to be a very small scale group, very like cheap, like 20-30 bucks, just to kind of cover the space, but to be able to sit down with investors and walk them through how to run the numbers and how to determine what a good deal is. It might be really beneficial for you guys, maybe even after the Smith Maneuver webinar, if you guys are planning on implementing this strategy and you don't know what types of investments you should be purchasing with these funds, and then maybe that would be a really good spot for you to go to. So reach out to me if you are interested in that. It's for newer investors. I just don't want 10-year veterans coming out and just as a place to throw their business cards and sip some coffee. This is for new investors who want to learn how to analyze deals. So you can reach out to me about that and get on the wait list.
Yes, I really am happy to see more and more in-person events. I think after COVID, everything switched to online, and online is great. It allows us to access a lot more resources, but also if there are any in-person places, they're wonderful as well. So I'm going to move on and start with one amazing topic, something that everyone loves and loves to talk about, and that is taxes. Taxes is something that, now let's be honest, people don't really like to talk about or don't really understand very good. And it's something that is a bit intimidating or a little bit scary. And it's something that usually you would need help with. And one of our biggest expenses in life is the mortgage payment to the house where we live in. And in Canada, the mortgage interest on that payment that you're making is not tax deductible. You have to be using your after-tax dollars to pay for your primary residence. My understanding is that in the South, in the US, there is provisions or ways where you could actually be deducting that. But in Canada, there is nothing direct in the Income Tax Act that allows us to do that. However, there is something else quite interesting. The Canadian Income Tax Act allows us, whenever we borrow money to invest, and we are expecting to make some type of profit from that investment, to write off the interest for that money that we've borrowed. This comes into a kind of detailed explanation into something called an income tax folio. That's usually what CRA takes and interprets the Income Tax Act and writes a detailed sort of analysis of how it should be interpreted and how things apply. And I have left a reference there where they discuss that. So if we're smart, we can think about how can we convert our non-deductible payment, our mortgage payment from our principal residence into a deductible one. Because if we can do that, that can save us a lot of money. And here I have the highest Canadian tax rates. This is an older one, an older table from 2019, but it has changed slightly. However, it is still driving the point that in many provinces, the highest income tax rate is actually over 50%. If you look at Quebec, for example, 53%, Nova Scotia, 54%, Newfoundland, 51%. So that means for every dollar you make, when you've reached the highest threshold, you will be giving more than half of that to the government. In addition, there would be all kinds of other taxes like sales tax and property tax and all kinds of things. But if we are able to find a way to take the non-deductible expense and convert it into deductible, that would really save you a lot of money. And maybe you're not in that highest bracket, but even the lower ones are still quite high. 30% savings is amazing. 40% saving, also amazing. So let's look at one simple amortization. $350,000 mortgage over 25 years, 3.5%. That's a low percentage point. You're looking at about $1,750 a month payment. For that, it comes out to, for the first year, about $12,000 in interest. And I'm oversimplifying this because we cannot immediately convert the entire amount. However, if we could, $12,000 is a lot of money. So if we are having to pay a non-deductible $12,000 interest payment, that means we're out of pocket, or our net cost is $12,000 because we cannot really deduct it. However, if we find a way to make it deductible, and you're in one of these high brackets, like for example in Alberta, 48%, then what ends up happening is your net cost becomes only 6,240. That's a huge difference. Yes, it's not immediate money. You have to wait until you file your return, until you get, you either will not pay taxes or you'll pay less taxes, but you're still saving a lot. So this is a very important concept to understand as we move forward with this presentation. And to drive this point further, just recently, on the 29th of August, the Financial Post wrote an article about borrowing money to invest, and that the CRA provided some clarification on those rules. And I will post in the chat later the links to this post, as well as the income tax folio. And that is the same income tax folio that we referenced earlier on. That folio was updated slightly to provide a clarification. I took an excerpt out of it, but the main point is that the only way for you to be able to deduct the interest from anything that you borrow is if the investment you purchase can give you a reasonable expectation to make interest on it or dividend income. It would not work if you are making a capital gain. And the capital gain would be in a situation where, for example, you think you could purchase gold and you can sit on it and wait until 10, 15 years later on, you sell it. That is a capital gain, and it would not qualify for you to be able to write off interest. Another example is if you buy options like the option to purchase stocks. Usually that is for the purpose of you being able to realize a capital gain later on. However, there are other types of investments, which we will cover today, that very clearly give you either a dividend payment or an interest payment. And when that is the case, then you can absolutely write off the interest for that. So let's move on to talk about what is the Smith maneuver. So the Smith maneuver, in very simple terms, is a mortgage conversion strategy. We're going to take your non-deductible mortgage and convert it into an investment loan that essentially can become deductible. You can get three immediate benefits out of it. You will have a reduced tax bill because now you will be able to write off that interest, and you will either realize a refund or you will not have to pay taxes when you normally would have to. You will be able to eliminate your mortgage in record time. Because you're making payments towards that original mortgage and you're converting it into essentially an investment loan, your mortgage will go down really quickly. And we'll show you a couple of accelerators today that will actually drive it even faster. And over the years, you will enjoy compound growth on the investments that you make. So compound growth means that when you're paid a dividend or you're paid interest on the investments that you decided on, then you would continue to make interest on that amount that you've made previously. So these benefits can start immediately, and they can be concurrent. All three of them can be at the same time. And most importantly, you do not require any additional cash flow to make that happen. So the same monthly payment that you make right now, you can continue to make that. You just need to funnel the money into a very specific way in order to get to a point where you are able to achieve this strategy. The strategy is using the cash that you're already paying and maximizes the mortgage debt that you already have in place, and is a one-time restructure of your current financial affairs. That's all this is. You don't need to understand all the additional complexities. The strategy has a lot of write-ups and a lot of legal things that people need to understand. But for you as the client, all you need to know is that these are the steps you need to take. So to move forward, I will invite Mr. Keaton to talk about what is a re-advanceable mortgage, because that is where everything starts, with the re-advanceable mortgage.
Awesome. Can you guys hear me better now?
Yes.
Perfect. So a re-advanceable mortgage is quite simple. It is the first thing we have to do is take a step back from a traditional mortgage. where we think of it as a debt that we make payments to. The bank collects interest and slowly pays off that debt over time. Eventually, we are mortgage free. That is called a non-collateral charge, typically. Just it's a very linear process. The world's evolved, and now there's something called collateral charge mortgages. Think of these more like a basket, and inside of that basket goes different layers of lending products. Now, one of those products that they give us are what we traditionally think of a mortgage, kind of a gradual debt that's paid off. But because the overall product's a basket, they were able to attach what's called a home equity line of credit to this mortgage. So as the mortgage is paid down, there's a home equity line of credit that has the limit growing. So I don't know if I can do that. I can't do it, but you'll see in the diagram that there's a non-deductible mortgage loan and there's a line of credit, or it says investment loan. As that blue bar goes down, as we pay off our mortgage, the lender is giving us access to what we've paid off because it is our equity, and they're giving us the ability to use it however we see fit. Now, the lenders prefer when we go to Vegas or we get our lips done or we get jet skis, but Fraser and Robinson Smith created a better way, which is the Smith Maneuver, and that's how we actually use these products, which they happily let us use for consumer spending, as a way to change the lives of not only ourselves, but also our parents and our kids. So that's a re-advanceable mortgage in a nutshell.
I think we can go over this payment example as well. So right here we have a mortgage payment of $2,200, out of which 1,260 is the interest portion, 940 is the principal. So if you start with 500,000 and you make your first payment, then the amount of the principal will become available immediately into your re-advanceable line of credit. So now you could take $940 and invest it into something. And I guess the next step is, where do we want to take this? Where is this leading to? And that is the end of your journey of conversion.
So the important thing to know is often people are like, what? I don't get this. Very simply summarized, modern lending products, if set up correctly, automatically give you access to the debt you pay off. We can use access to that new money, that home equity line of credit, and we can use it to create this strategy where we're able to take that money we get each month and in a certain way invest it for our future. That allows Steve, the accountant, to write off the interest we pay on that new debt, which gives us a tax refund at the end of the year, which we can then take and further pay down our mortgage, giving us access to even more money and invest and rinse and repeat.
I wanted to add as well that, for that first portion there, many newer, if you're new to real estate investing and maybe even new to mortgages and equity, that whole mortgage payment, a portion of it going towards the interest and a portion of it going towards the principal, is that it's nothing special because of the Smith Maneuver. That is how it normally works. And every payment that you make will pay, a portion of that will pay down your mortgage. So there's nothing crazy or new in, here. But what I think what we're trying to show you is as that equity is built in, it is immediately available in that re-advanceable mortgage, immediately able to borrow, which is very cool. The re-advanceable mortgage is something that not a lot of people talk about. It is a really, really cool product for investors.
Yes, and this is what allows for this strategy to work. So you can see that in the start, you have this huge mortgage of $500,000, which you would not be able to deduct any of the interest. And as time has gone by using various strategies, which we will talk about one of them in the next slide, you are able to move that first line, the blue line, to be into the second bucket where all the interest becomes a write-off. And you can see right here, we have 100% tax deductible. Your mortgage is completely eliminated at this point. You are already enjoying compound growth on anything you've purchased with this money, and the debt is offset by your investment portfolio that you've built up.
And one of the things I'll add is that this example this is a theoretical example. This is not a direct real world, in the sense that, as someone mentioned, your line of credit caps at 65%. But Steve and I's job as professionals who are experts in this is to work together to deal with certain barriers you'll face. And as an example, we get around the 65% limit to the line of credit by simply using the right lenders and products that allow us to lock some of that line of credit debt into a new mortgage component. Now, you don't need to follow this, but know that there's a method to the madness. And there's layers to the planning that goes on behind the scenes to not only keep your risk lower, to keep your payments lower, lower the interest cost. All of this goes on behind the scenes, but that's not the goal of this presentation today to get into how we fine tune things, but rather to show the basics of how this works and how it can impact you.
I'm really glad that you brought that up though, because it is really it really highlights the importance of having the right people putting this together for you and not just trying to do it yourself, not just calling up TD Canada Trust and saying, hey, I heard about some steps mortgage, re-advanceable mortgage. I want to do this. And then just trying to do it yourself. What's going to end up happening is you're going to miss a few steps. You're not going to do it properly. And then come time for taxes or come time when CRA comes knocking at the door for an audit, that's when you're going to have some problems. So just making sure you use the right Smith certified professionals to make sure that they set it up properly, and let Keaton and let Steve manage all the other background stuff. You don't have to worry about that.
Yes, and I think I mentioned into another webinar I did with Keaton, people's goals and life changes. Things happen. And maybe you did have some medical emergency and you have to tap into the line of credit. And it's already happened. We cannot do anything about it other than fix it. So that's when you would come to your professionals so we can figure out what are the steps that we need to take, so that way your line of credit is no longer contaminated, or possibly they would not or they would disallow the interest deduction from it. So perhaps if we would like to move on to the accelerator.
Yeah.
Thing is,
do you mind
Keaton can
explaining
talk
what an
about.
accelerator is by definition? Just so
Okay,
people
maybe I'll start with that. The Smith maneuver has the very basic implementation, and that is called the plain Jane. However, you could implement additional strategy to layer on top of the plain Jane to speed up the process and to make the movement of the non-deductible to the deductible side a lot faster. And we will do a live demo today, so you will see the huge difference between the plain Jane and implementing the cash flow dam accelerator.
100%. And I'll be blunt, guys, these graphs even confuse me sometimes. They're supposed to be conceptual, and it's very hard to show a picture that describes a real world strategy. I think the important thing is to know that this takes about 10 to 15 minutes a month to do. It is 3 to 5 basic steps that can literally be written out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The real world is very simple, but trying to learn what it is, this does appear far more complex than it actually is.
So can we go over the steps?
Sure. So do we want to go through the steps of the basic Smith maneuver before we jump into what cash damming is and just add extra complexity?
Let's do that.
Okay. So for the basic Smith maneuver, there's always going to be the first step, which is you make your mortgage payment. Right? And we all have to do this, regardless if we're doing the strategy or not, we make our mortgage payment. With a re-advancing mortgage, when we pay our mortgage, some goes to interest, the rest pays off the debt. With a re-advancing mortgage, we get access to that debt we paid off on a new home equity line of credit that would have been set up for you. We take the money from this home equity line of credit and we move it to a special account. It's called a Smith Maneuver checking account. There's absolutely nothing special about it other than we only use it for the strategy. So it is used we put money in it from the line of credit, then we send money back to the line of credit to make the payment, and the rest gets invested. That's it. That's the basic Smith maneuver in a nutshell. Now you may be wondering, but Keaton, where do I pay this line of credit from? Well, that's the cool thing. As you pay down your mortgage each month, you pay off even more principal, because over time we pay less and less interest on our mortgage and more debt. That's what an amortized mortgage is. That's why your very last payment's like all debt and no interest. So because we pay off more and more debt each month, or principal, this gives us access to more money on our line of credit, which allows us to continue to invest and for the line of credit to pay its own interest. So you can use this strategy without any outside money. But very basically, it's just a couple transfers.
And I believe the reason why it was designed and created that way is if you have that Smith Maneuver checking account, which is essentially a clearing account, you create a record. And that is the record that we can present to the government when they come asking questions, because now it's all black on white. These are the transactions that took place, and they went either to pay off the interest on the line of credit or to be invested.
100%. So if we want to go to the next slide, cash damming, we add a layer on top of this. So normally when, let's say Steve owns an investment property, the way that Canadians regularly do things is they collect their rent check. So I give Steve the rent money every month. Steve says, thank you, Keaton. He puts it into his bank account. He pays his mortgage, his property taxes, his utilities, his home insurance. Maybe at the end of the month, he's got $200 left over, and then he calls up his financial planner and they invest it or they do something useful with it. Cash damming is about optimizing the flow of funds to create a 6 to 7 figure improvement for your retirement. So instead, I give Steve the rent. Steve takes the rent and immediately pays down his, so that would be step one, the $3,000 in prop receipts, number one. That's me giving Steve $3,000 in rent. He takes the rent and then he pays down the mortgage on his home with it.
Wait, what?
Yeah, it gets a little weird. When he pays down the mortgage on his home with it, he now gets access to most of that money on his line of credit. So he reborrows off that line of credit, and then he uses it to pay for the rental property expenses. So what he's done is he's eliminated $3,000 of non-tax deductible debt, and he's replaced it in a CRA-friendly way with $3,000 of tax deductible debt. Simply repeating this process can have 6 to 7 figure improvements in your net worth, and we're going to demonstrate that after. But at a very basic level, all we're doing is taking the money you're already collecting and we're doing the most efficient way possible. So we're, instead of paying down a tax deductible debt, which is the mortgage on your rental, first, we're eliminating some non-tax deductible debts, the mortgage on your primary residence. Then we're reborrowing the money in a clear, isolated way using that investment line of credit, the home equity line of credit, and then we're using it to pay for the investment expenses. And this is the beauty of the strategy, is we're just taking the resources you already have and we're just stretching them further to create tax benefits, which then create tax refunds, which pay off your mortgage even faster, which then creates even more tax benefits. And then it creates investments which start to grow. And we're going to go through the example of what that actually leads to for people.
So by borrowing those funds from your HELOC and paying the expenses on your investment property, that's what makes it tax deductible, because you're essentially investing it into that rental property. In the eyes of CRA, how does it become, like, because most people would think you borrow the money and you would invest it into a property, like a down payment for a property.
I think I should be answering that. And it's the concept that we spoke earlier in the presentation, where when you can show that you've borrowed money in order to be able to generate some type of income or dividend, then you're allowed to write it off. And the rental property generates you income. That is the very clear connection there.
There is we said we wouldn't answer any questions, but I feel like maybe we could answer one.
Okay.
It looks like I don't know their name. KY said, where does the interest cost for borrowing the $3,000 come from? That could grow to be a lot after a few years.
I'll tackle that one if you want, Steve. So absolutely, you are paying interest on this home equity line of credit. But it's important to know that, think of it like a scale. You've lowered the weight of the scale, the side on your normal mortgage. You owe $3,000 less. So you're no longer paying any interest on that $3,000 on your home. But we've created an offsetting debt, $3,000, that's now in the line of credit. So we're still paying interest on the same debt. But the difference is you get to write off that interest against your income with the CRA. So overall, the debt is lighter on the home equity line of credit side, because when we factor in the ability to write off those taxes and what that means for you dollar-wise, it costs less overall. Now, sometimes the difference is maybe saving 1 to 2%. For other clients, it's like 4 to 5%. So it depends on the situation. But long story short, there's the math behind this that we'll show shortly, that this is very much in your favor.
Mm-hmm. So there is no difference. You had a mortgage of $500,000, you paid it down to $497,000, and then you put 3 over here. It's still a $500,000 debt. You're still paying the same payments and same interests. But what Keaton's saying is over time, you're actually paying significantly less. So I think that he was thinking that by borrowing the $3,000, now you have to pay interest on $3,000 more, but there is no more. It's exactly the same. Instead of having 500,000 on one, now you have 497 and 3. It's the
And I
exact same.
think one clarification should be that the $3,000 collected as rent being paid into the mortgage are actually paying off the principal of it.
Oh, that is a good point. Yeah.
So that way the line of credit limit becomes available.
Yeah, any prepayment to a mortgage goes 100% to the principal. It is the regular reoccurring payment that deals with the interest.
Mhm.
And we'll just clarify this. Steve, when you borrow to pay for a rental property mortgage, you are able to write off the debt that goes to paying off the principal and the interest on that rental property mortgage, correct?
Correct.
Perfect.
Okay.
So once again, guys, like this can feel overwhelming. Remember, this is a teaser. This is a 60-minute. This is how the process works. There's courses on this, books on this. Steve and I spend our days explaining and educating clients on this. The goal is not that at the end of this, you're like, oh my God, I get it. Like, boop, boop, set it up. Like, no, guys, this is more to whet your appetite. Is this reasonable for you? Could this improve your future? Do you want to learn more?
I think the answer is yes, though, right? To your question,
Okay.
could this improve your future?
Looks
I
like.
think so. That's for me and my family.
There you go. There you go.
Okay, so maybe next we should talk about asset selection, and maybe Wayne can tackle that one.
I'm going to keep this super quick. And we thought this would be a really good idea to kind of add in here. Most of what we're talking about is choosing the right mortgages. And then we're talking about how to implement the strategy, how it can help you. You guys are going to get into some really great examples here in a minute. It's really going to shine a even bigger light on this for you guys and show you the opportunities. But I wanted to kind of I want to talk about the importance of just remembering the fundamentals of real estate investing. Now, we just talked about cash flow damming there. And I just want you to forget that just for 3 minutes, because I don't want to overcomplicate this. I want you to imagine that you've got a significant amount of equity in your property, and now you want to implement the Smith Maneuver. So you're going to get a re-advanceable mortgage, you're going to borrow the funds, and you're going to be investing them. I just want you guys to remember that we are still, most of you guys at least, are going to be investing in real estate, and you need to remember the fundamentals of real estate, and just put it very simply, cash flow. Okay. Cash flow at the end of the day is going to be your risk mitigator. And as you continue to borrow more money and do all these maneuvers and pull here and pull there and tax refunds and everything else, I just want you guys to remember that you still need to make sure that you're building a strong portfolio that can weather the storms of the inevitable in the real estate market. Things can happen, interest rates can change, rents can go down, and all those other things. So if you are investing in real estate, I just want you guys to remember to keep it simple. I want you to keep doing your research, your market research, okay? Choose the right tenants. And then lastly, make sure that your properties have good cash flow. Cash flow is a risk mitigator. The more cash flow you have, the less likely that you're going to be ruined or affected by outside factors like the things that the market does, right? Inflation, interest rates, all those other things. So if you guys need any help on the fundamentals of real estate investing, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. We've got a great mentorship program. We also do free coaching every morning on our podcast. The resources are out there. Plus, there's other great resources out there as well. Get them wherever you want to get them, but just make sure that you guys are sticking to the fundamentals when you are buying real estate. Nothing changes on that side of your business.
And I have to add, people are probably wondering, free coaching, what's the catch? There is a catch. It's at 6 a.m. every morning.
Yeah, that is a real catch.
I've been doing it for 3 years, every morning up at 5 o'clock, and I answer questions every morning. So if there's anyone that gets the crappy end of the stick, it's me. Having to perform.
I'll stop feeling sorry for myself getting up once a month for it.
I'm the one performing, doing free coaching, answering any questions that pop up on the fly. So if I can do it, you can do it. And if you really want this, and I think a lot of you guys do, a lot of you guys signed up for this, a lot of you guys want a better future, a lot of you guys want to build something for yourselves and for your kids and your legacy. If you want it bad enough, how is it really that hard to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning? And if you can't wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning and take access, get access to and take advantage of the free education, you can pay for it as well. If there's a better time for you, it's just going to cost a little bit of money. That's all. But there's lots of options out there. There's lots of free stuff online, but just make sure you understand the fundamentals and you're buying good properties. That's please do it for me.
Okay, let's move on to the examples because I think everybody has been waiting for that. So I think Keaton is going to share his screen instead, and he's going to show you both the plain Jane and the cash flow dam.
So this is not the most visually beautiful calculator, but it demonstrates the math, the outcome that you get. So I'm going to quickly run through with everyone what we're using as the baseline. I hope this applies to most of you where you're like, well, I'm close to that, or I do a little bit better. I'm sorry if it doesn't, but we tried our best to be fair. And by no means,
1
Steve.
second, and say that Keaton has shared his screen, and in case you don't see it, there could potentially be a second tab on the top of your window for Zoom, so switch to that one.
Just the accountant to be organized on this stuff. I just guns blazing. So Steve set up the numbers for this. These are not the numbers I would have cherry picked to show a crazy example with the Smith Maneuver. He kept things reasonably modest, and I'll explain why in a minute. But so we're using an example of a household that earns $120,000 a year, collects less than $2,000 a month in rent from a property, and has $15,000 a year in expenses. So their cash flow is less than a few $100s a month, essentially. This is not like a home run scenario. This is a pretty modest property, pretty modest household. We're assuming that they have a house worth about $437,000, which is pretty close to the average price of a home in Edmonton right now. They owe $350 on their mortgage, and we're assuming the interest cost on their mortgage long-term is going to be about 5%. For the home equity line of credit, we're trying to be fair here. We're assuming the interest cost on the home equity line of credit is going to be 6.7% for the next 30 years, which I expect rates on the mortgage side are going to come down, and I certainly expect interest rates on the home equity line of credit to come down. We could have used lower numbers to make this look better, but we wanted to be fair. And for anyone wondering, this strategy works at over 10%, by the way. It was created in the 80s to deal with high interest rates. So I've actually created examples for clients where they borrow at 10% interest and they earn 4.5% interest on their investments, and they still come out $100,000 ahead. So
I've seen it.
We wanted to be fair.
It's true. It's true.
So we can play with this. The investment assumptions right now are at 10% growth on the investments. The S&P 500 index, as an example, has averaged over 10% for the last 50 years. But let's be fair. Let's make 8%. Like, once again, we're not here to sell anything. We're here to show you a strategy. So for the plain Jane Smith maneuver, remember how we had the mortgage where we pay the mortgage down, and as that mortgage is paid down, we get access to money on line of credit. This is what this is right here. So I'm going to assume that for this strategy, these individuals are going to borrow 100% of what they pay down and reinvest. They're earning 8%. Now already we're creating about a $100,000 improvement on their net worth. So at the very end, they're going to owe some money on the line of credit. We all know this, and you're probably thinking this, but Keaton, what about the line of credit? Well, they're going to owe $284,000 30 years from now. That is the line of credit. At 8%, their investments would have grown to $383,000, giving them a $99,000 spread. But there's another component that we've touched on very lightly, and that is at the end of the year, we're going to get a tax refund. We take that tax refund and we pay down the non-tax deductible mortgage, which gives us access to more money to borrow, which we invest. And boom, simply by adding that step, now we end up with a $265,000 improvement to our net worth, earning 8%. So this is very simple. This would be just simply you make your mortgage payment, which happens automatically. 3 days later, you log into your online banking, you take up your line of credit, and you make a transfer to a special account called a Smith Manoeuvre checking account. You then move that money to be invested, and you pay the line of credit interest. That's all we're doing each month. And then at the end of the year, when you file your taxes, Steve says, hey, Wayne, get me your annual mortgage statement and tell me what the interest in the line of credit is. And it's $12,000, 306. Steve goes, thank you. And then when you get a CRA check, you prepay your mortgage with it. That's all we're doing right now to have this improvement. So that's the plain Jane, or the first Smith maneuver. But the second thing, and what I'm really passionate about, is what's called cash damming. That's what we discussed earlier. So this is asking us, hey, you've got some rental income, and then you've got slightly lower rental expenses. Would you like to take that rental income, pay down your mortgage, then borrow on the HELOC to pay for the expenses and invest the difference? The moment we do that, all of a sudden, we can write off all of the interest on our mortgage after 10 years. We create $540,000 of tax deductions, which in this example is worth $200,000 to us, because a dollar of deduction does not mean a dollar from the CRA. We have to multiply that deduction by our tax rate, and that's where Steve comes in.
Yeah,
But
and this example assumes the lower rate because we already input it, but the household makes 120,000. So I think that's around the 30% or so mark. So it's not the most extreme. If you are a high income earner or you're making more than 120,000 per household, you would actually see better numbers than this.
yes, so at the end of the day, simply taking that one property that's just chugging along and adding it to using the Smith maneuver and the cash damming, taking that rent, paying down the mortgage, reborrowing, paying the expenses, we're adding essentially $500,000 to our net worth. $500,000 by adding a couple steps to simply optimize things. What do they say, Wayne? You're always going on about work smarter, not harder. I think that this is a perfect example of it.
This is, it's still, I gotta be honest with you, it still blows my mind every time I see it. It still blows my mind looking at these numbers. It's so simple.
And don't forget, there's no extra money. You're not, having to give away those Starbuckses or something. Like, this is money you already pay anyway.
Keep your Netflix.
Yeah, all the consumer is paying for is their mortgage payment. This individual, this household makes their mortgage payment each month, and that is the only expense of their mortgage in this strategy. Now, that's not guaranteed for everybody. Each person's situation is a little different, and if your rental property is cash flow negative, or there's lots of variations. But the core of the strategy is if it's set up correctly, you make your mortgage payment, you do not need to pay any other expenses related to this strategy. And here's the cool thing. We start to get stupid numbers pretty quickly. Like, this is a 10% return. I'm not going to go any higher, but $1.3 million off of cash damming with a 10% return. Like, even if we go to 6%, which is below the cost of the line of credit, we're still coming out ahead. So I'm not going to go 1,000 different examples. The point is, and the way I view this, you're moving in a positive direction. How much or how little? Who cares? We don't really know what the world's going to do over the next 30 years. But then at least we know that we're doing everything we can for our families so that we know that our parents will hopefully be taken care of. We can provide for our kids. And if we're really lucky, we can retire one day. It's almost going to be a dirty word soon. To say that you want to retire is going to be like, you didn't. How dare you say that? And then at the very end, there's a confusing graph that's available in the calculator. Very simply, this green line is your normal mortgage over 30 years. Normally speaking, you would pay off that mortgage in 30 years. This blue line is the mortgage using the Smith maneuver strategy. So by year 10, we've completely eliminated the non-tax deductible debt, but we've replaced it with a tax deductible loan. This yellow line is our total debt level. So you'll notice that the debt level goes down ever so slightly over the first 10 years due to some of the rules with the government, and then we just maintain that debt level. The red line is our net worth. So over time, it grows, and we ultimately come out $758,000 ahead. This is using the 8%. Oh, sorry, no, actually, this is terrible. Hang on a minute. I put this all the way down to 6%. No wonder it looks so terrible.
And wait, there's more.
Yeah. Oops.
What?
Even at 6%, even if you've got a terrible financial planner, you can still do okay. But long story short, this is your investment growth.
Just out of curiosity, do our people watching have to switch their screen? Somebody says they can't see it.
You got to click the screen share because I guess Zoom changed how it works.
Yeah, if you do not see the screen, Keaton, there should be in your Zoom window on the top, there should be a tab where you can see something called Keaton's Kirkwood screen. That's the one that you need to click on to be able to see. But I think he's done at this point, so perhaps you could.
Well, there's two things I'm going to add.
Okay.
Very quickly. One is you'll notice in this version of the strategy, which is not the most efficient way to do it, the debt level stays consistent. What Steve and I do to work with our clients is once you hit this point where all of the debt is tax deductible, we investigate, and I'll give a very basic real world. This is currently at a line of credit of 6.7% in this example. Could we turn that into an adjustable rate mortgage at maybe 5.2% instead of prime plus 50? We could have prime minus 1 and save you 1.5%. That has two benefits. You get an even better net worth improvement, you pay less interest, and this debt level declines over time. The other thing to consider is that our portfolio in this example is worth 1.16 or 11 million after 30 years. At that point, you could choose to sell some of the investments and pay off the debt, or you could keep the debt and say, hey, I don't really care about having $330,000 of debt in my retired years. I have 1.1 million in new investments from the strategy. But it's important to know that this is up to you based on your comfort level, and that there's not one magic way to do the strategy, but rather Steve and I's job is to adapt the strategy to what's going to work best for you and your risk tolerances.
Absolutely.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
I know we're cutting her close on time, but did you touch on the amortization saved there on your screen?
Yeah, you're fully tax deductible year 10. So you've essentially paid off that original debt in 10 years.
Yeah, instead of 30. So that's 20
Does
years.
everyone understand that? Does that make sense? Like maybe you might have done that. There's so much information. So I just want to, maybe I missed that, but your whole mortgage will be tax deductible by year 10 is what you're saying.
Yes, with a very poorly performing investment property that does not rent for much. That's like a condo in Edmonton at this point.
So the interest that you pay on your primary residence mortgage will be tax deductible, guys, every year.
By year 10.
That's crazy. Man, it's
those were big numbers. So, okay. So now that we've covered all these things, what are the next steps for you? The first step that I always tell clients, because they usually tend to call me, is I send them back to their mortgage broker and I say, contact your broker and see if you're set up for the right product. This strategy doesn't work if you don't have the right line of credit. You cannot just walk into a branch and say, I'd like to get a HELOC and then start implementing that. It doesn't work like that. So you need to contact someone that is certified or that understands this strategy really well, so that way they can set you up for success. The second thing you need to do is you need to decide and figure out what are you going to do with the money that you're going to have to invest every month. And possibly one thing you will be doing is maybe you will invest it in the market for the first few years until you save enough, until you buy your first rental property. Maybe you liquidate it, you buy your first rental, and then you start putting it back into the market. But you need to figure out what you will do with it. And you can do that on your own if you feel comfortable, or you can find a certified Smith Manoeuvre financial planner that can explain all the options to you. And the last thing you need to do is to contact your accounting professional to make sure that depending on the strategy that you've decided to implement, that you are tracking and recording everything that is necessary for it. Some of the strategies, like the plain Jane, like the very basic version, don't require very much tracking or recording, but some other ones, like the cash flow dam, particularly if you live on the main floor and maybe have tenants in the basement type of thing, may require a little more paperwork so we can support the claim. And that there's a big reason why. Very often when we claim big amounts for the carrying charges, so interest charges on your tax return, it sort of triggers an automatic pre-assessment review on your tax return. And what that means is that before you receive a notice of assessment, before you get the refund, they will ask for some documentation and a human will look at them to make sure that everything is okay to release that notice of assessment. So it's important that you have all your ducks in a row and everything ready to go, and you submit your tax return early. You don't want to wait until the last minute because it's going to delay your refund, or it may block you from being able to do some of your other important things, like maybe getting a refinance on another mortgage, because the lenders require notice of assessment. But if yours is being held back because it's getting reviewed, then you're not going to be able to get that approved. So those would be the 3 next steps that would be important for you. And I have put on the next slide QR codes for each one of us appointment calendars. So you can scan the QR code and you can see a time that works for you. Schedule a consultation, 15 minutes to start, just to see where you're at in your journey, which strategy makes more sense for you, and how can we help you to achieve those future goals that you have.
And I will add, there are something called Smith Manoeuvre certified professionals. I see that there's 2 other brokers that were in this room that also are. There's not a lot of us though. Please make sure you get someone who specializes in this, whether it's on the tax, the financial planning, or the broker side, because maybe this seems simple, maybe this seems complicated, but there are a lot of nuances behind the scenes that professionals have to deal with. And it's important that they do that correctly for you. There's also some risks to the strategy, guys. This is not utterly risk-free. It's like skydiving. You jump out of a plane, no matter how well prepared you are, you could get unlucky. So it is important that someone takes the time to talk about the pros and the cons. But our goal of this tonight was to show you how it works at a very basic level and if it can improve your situation. So hope it helps.
Yeah. I feel a little left out. I don't have one of those stickers.
You could get one. There's a Smith Manoeuvre Ambassador program.
I was asking Steve about that. I'm like, do they have something for? I'd love.
They do. Designed particularly for influential people like yourself.
Thank you. That's awesome. That's awesome, guys. This was a ton of fun. Thank you guys so much. I think I'd like to say on behalf of everybody else as well, because I saw the comments in there and everybody was, when they started seeing it all coming together in the example, just the mind blown emojis coming through. And yeah, this is a lot of fun. So thank you guys for providing all the value that you did. There's a bunch of people asking, will there be a recording? Yes, we will send out a recording to you in a follow-up email once it's available. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, like I said, scan any of these codes here, get in touch with these individuals, and I'd love to hear feedback from you guys as well. If you guys have any feedback about this, or if you have feedback maybe in the future when you do set this up and you got it all, you got it all ready, and you're putting your rent into your mortgage every month and doing the cash damming, let me know. Let us know how it's working out for you guys. I'd really love to hear that afterwards. That wraps it up. Thank you, gentlemen.
I have one random question because it's funny. Did you tell everyone there will be a recording at the very end, just so everybody has to participate and pay attention in case there wasn't? I noticed you strategically left that detail at the very end.
Not on purpose.
I think it will be on purpose next time.
Great strategy to make sure that everyone's paying attention and taking notes.
Yeah. Okay, guys.
Thanks again for coming out, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Bye.
Bye for now.